stream. Let's start letting our friends in the peanut gallery. And we'll feature our guest and myself for the day here as well. Spotlight myself, and we'll spotlight Jed. All right, wonderful. Welcome, everyone. Piano Tech Radio Hour here. As always, we'll kind of just let people get settled in, and as we do each week, just to make sure y'all here and ready to go. Sometimes there are a couple late comers. Make sure y'all got a good seat right up front. You can scooch in closer to your computer if you want to feel close to the action. If you're out there on socials, Facebook and YouTube, wonderful. We'll also add some links in Facebook and YouTube chats. If you are catching this live, that means you can click that link and you can actually jump into the Zoom session if you want to be even closer to the action. We're welcoming, of course, questions and comments. And, of course, if you're in the Zoom and it feels appropriate, we can pop you up on video or audio to participate. No pressure. Our approach today will just be playing it by ear. But if you are inclined to participate, do it sooner than later. I feel like a show that we've done previously, it's like we said people could participate, and then everybody started throwing things in about the last 5 minutes. So if you are inclined to participate, go for it sooner than later. Then we can actually have meaningful conversation, because we do usually cut it right about at the hour. And I'll do an intro to the show, and then we'll do an intro to our guest, and we'll dive right in. I'm very excited about this one. Got a guest I've been hearing about for years, doing real cool stuff. Hopefully he'll live up to the reputation.
Probably not.
Probably not. But I will introduce us here. Welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. We gather here every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world, including manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, and of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal is to become better at our craft, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. You can also subscribe to this program, Piano Tech Radio Hour, for just $16 a month. You get direct access to each week's private Zoom call, as well as all the archival recordings of over 200 episodes in our member area. You can join using the link bit.ly/joinptrh. That's bit.ly/joinptrh. And of course, that helps to support the program and the team that puts this all together. There's a lot going on behind the scenes, and we do appreciate that support. Before we jump into the intro of our guest today, just remind you, this goes out as a podcast a few weeks later. So make sure you check out the audio-only versions and the whole podcast. It's great for driving in the car, working in the shop, doing your workouts, all that stuff. And you can find that at pianotechradio.com. You can also check out our blog, where we go into really detailed information about how to care about pianos, stuff that, or care for pianos and care about them, I suppose. But yeah, stuff you usually can't find elsewhere, detailed information about voicing, piano rebuilding, some of that obscure stuff, but very interesting. The evolution of the piano action, for example. We do have a master class coming up with, I can't blanking on his name, of course, right as it approaches. But he's a very big guy on the internet. He's been doing internet sales of pianos for many years, and has built an extraordinary presence on YouTube as well. And he'll be doing a master class. And then also check out on our socials: LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. All right, let's let in a couple more people here, and we'll introduce our guest. Today, we are thrilled to welcome the multi-talented Jed Distler to our podcast. As a composer, pianist, educator, and artistic director of salon concerts at Clavier House in New York City, Jed has shaped a unique musical journey that bridges classical and jazz genres with exceptional creativity. Renowned for his inventive interpretations and compositions, Jed's achievements include a Guinness World Record for the largest keyboard ensemble, a solo concert featuring all of Thelonious Monk's songs, and his Mahler Symphony four-hand project that has been shared worldwide. Jed's career is marked by his dedication to expanding the piano repertoire, whether through his iconic transcriptions of jazz legends Art Tatum and Bill Evans or his ambitious 1,827 bagatelles project in honor of Beethoven. He also hosts Between the Keys, an ASCAP award-winning radio show, and the new podcast, The Piano Maven. As a Steinway artist and educator, Jed has inspired students and audiences alike at festivals and masterclasses around the globe. Welcome, Jed Disler, to the program.
My God, what an introduction. I mean, it sounds more like an obituary. I think the only thing that you're missing is saying found dead in his Hollywood
Found
apartment.
dead in his home due to an overdose of chocolate
Over
milk.
overdose of playing Mahler forehand
Yes,
symphonies.
exactly.
Well, actually, I didn't. No, it's not Hollywood. I'm actually based in New York City.
Mm, yes, that sounds about right. Well, you're a perfect guest for the program. I can't believe we've been doing this program for over 4 years, and I'm glad we finally have you here. And the program itself, Piano Tech Radio Hour, is not necessarily New York based, but I do
Mhm.
have a lot of connections to New York, and so it'll be wonderful to speak with you and share that kind of New York piano vibrancy as well. Um, One thing
Mhm.
that we like to do up front is
Yeah,
just kind of do the old lay the foundation. So tell us a little bit about you as a youngster, and
me as
getting
a
into music and
youngster.
piano. Yeah, how did this all start, Jed?
How did this all start? That's
Yeah.
actually a good question. I think how the piano started was that my mother had bought an upright piano that was in our basement in the house where I was raised in West Orange, New Jersey. And I was fascinated by the piano, and I started really teaching myself and playing by ear, and I was very interested in notating music. And I think I have some notebooks of when I was scribbling in the notebooks, and it doesn't quite look like notation, but it's approximate notation. So I think that the creative bug and the piano playing bug and the improvising bug were planted in me at a very early age. But from babyhood, I certainly remember that my mother was constantly playing records for me and
Mm.
bringing records. I'm talking about vinyl and 78, that I'm
Mm-hmm.
dating myself horribly here. And what was very cool was that she never had any preferences of musical styles. I would hear things from children's records to classical music to pop to Broadway shows. It was all on an equal level. So I think that this all planted the seeds. And then I took piano lessons as a kid, but I think I was always more creative than recreative because
Mm.
if I was studying a piece of music that I had to practice, I always wanted to improvise within it, even if it was Beethoven or Chopin, which I didn't realize that that's what people were supposed to do. Uh, but I
Wonderful.
and I was even making a living from music from age 11. I had a band with a piano, bass, drums, and an alto saxophonist in my grade school, and we played for weddings and bar mitzvahs and bank openings and stuff like that. So I was a gigger from the get-go,
Try getting a gig at a bank opening these days. I doubt
Well,
they'll front the money for that. But
you'd be surprised. I think I can't remember how recently this was, but certainly I remember quite a while ago at I think it was the Dime Savings Bank, if that exists anymore. They had jazz pianists playing during bank hours, and it was really quite wonderful.
that's
And
amazing.
and I
That's
always wanted
amazing.
to get a gig like that. I mean, I used to play, if I tell you the kind of jobs I did in my youth and formative years, you'd laugh, but I think that this is really a foundation that musicians really should think about seriously, because I meet so many young pianists when I'm teaching master classes, for instance, and Their ambition is just to be the next big classical music superstar, the next Yuja Wang or the next Lang
Hmm.
Lang.
Hmm.
And they don't realize is that, not too many people get to that position, but but they also have to realize that one can make a really interesting life in music and hopefully making money by doing all kinds of things, by playing contemporary music, by accompanying, by playing. I mean, the possibilities are endless, and this is what
Hmm.
I was doing from an early age because I don't. I think it was just the necessity of making a living. I never thought of bigger ambitions, until I guess I was a young adult.
Hmm. That sounds like a great, very rich background. And where was this? Was this in New York, or where did you come up?
Well, I grew up in a town called West Orange, New Jersey,
Oh yeah,
which,
you already said that.
right, well,
Sorry.
that's okay. And but I was going into New York City constantly, going to concerts. I was going to rock concerts. Even, when I was 11 and 12 years old, I was going to the Fillmore East to hear. I heard Cream in their farewell concert at Madison Square Garden. I heard Jim Morrison and the Doors. I
Amazing.
heard Janis Joplin. I heard with my piano teacher. She took me to the Fillmore East, and that impressed me. But what impressed me even more about the Janis Joplin concert, which was February 12th, 1969. You see, I remember the date. Their
Wow.
opening act was this little up and coming promising group called the Grateful Dead. And that
Wow.
was the first time I heard them. And I thought, oh my God, this is like jazz, but with rock instruments. And the collective improvising just impressed the hell out of me. And I didn't really become a deadhead. I didn't follow them all over the country. I only heard them 3 times in my life. But this is, and then I discovered jazz when I went to a summer music camp. And then I got very obsessed with going to hear jazz and trying to teach myself how to play jazz piano. But I had a wonderful mentor, Dick Hyman, a wonderful jazz
Oh yeah.
pianist, arranger, composer, who is still very much with us at the age of 97.
Amazing.
And and he's composing and playing. And he was a friend of the family, and his daughter, Judy, and I have the same piano teacher. So I would have dinner with the Hymans frequently, and I was just fascinated that someone could have a father who was a professional musician. So Dick kind of took me under his wing at a very early age, and he gave me informal lessons. He wasn't an official teacher, but he showed me so much. And basically, he provided the ethical blueprint of my musical life that has been pretty solid and steady for
Hmm.
more than half a century. But Dick used to take me to recording sessions and I'd go to concerts, so I would be observing what a professional musician was like. And I was lucky to go observe music sessions, background music sessions, and observing how musicians worked under pressure, and
Hmm.
and also how to use time valuably.
Hmm.
I don't know if I'm saying the right, how
You
to
could say it however
really
you want
make
to.
the best way to use time. So
Efficiently, yeah.
if efficiently, that's the word. And that helped me a lot when I became a teacher, or when I had to organize rehearsals or
Hmm.
festivals or do producing. How do you make the most of the time you have most efficiently? And this is something that is really quite important because I worked for about 20 years as the music director of the theater department at Sarah Lawrence College. And Sarah Lawrence College is basically a bastion of dilettantism. It's where it produces dabblers
Hmm.
mostly, and
Hmm.
which is one
Wonderful.
reason why I quit teaching there years ago, because, you know, you you try to, impart professional standards, and people just wanted to show up to rehearsal when it just suited them. And and teachers were just coddling all their students. I mean, it's kind of a joke, and I can say this. Yeah, I don't care. I don't care if people are going to criticize me for saying this, but I really don't give a flying what. But I learned a lot, based on my performing experience. I really learned a lot about how to hold rehearsals and how to organize rehearsals, because sometimes I would be in a rehearsal with a teacher or a director who had no idea how to put rehearsals together. I think the head of their theater department, who died many years ago, I remember he once spent 90 minutes, and I know this because I timed him with my watch. He spent 90 minutes at a rehearsal looking for a cassette while everybody was just sitting around, you know.
So I want to jump in here and branch off at a
Please.
couple of those points. Yes. Thank you for sharing all that. Um, okay, first of all, I did Google the dime bank. Um, there are dime banks. I just don't know if it's the same one. But there's actually several. There's a dime
Oh,
bank in Connecticut, and I didn't look up specifically West Orange. Also, I don't know if you know this, it looks like that concert you went to with Janis Joplin is fully on YouTube.
oh,
Um,
good. Yeah, probably the audio.
yeah, February 12th, 1969, Janis Joplin, New York City, Fillmore East. So if
Oh,
you want to, I won't play it now because who knows if it'll get, you know,
nah, no,
marked
but
down or something. But if you want to go back with Jed and be there with him at this concert, you can check that out.
well, the more interesting concert was April 26, 1971, because that was the Dead's last run at the Fillmore, and Duane Allman was sitting in with him the second set. That's a little
Mm,
more interesting. I would
okay,
go there first.
okay,
Okay,
fair
and
enough.
that's probably on YouTube.
Probably. Who knows? Everything's up there now. The other thing, just for a little bit of rapport building here, I did go to Rutgers University.
Oh,
So,
great. Oh,
yeah,
they have a fantastic music department. It's a
yes,
wonderful place. Great. In
yeah.
Newark or New Brunswick?
New Brunswick campus.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. It's a fabulous school. They have a great music department. I know a
mhm.
lot of people there.
And I did take my instructor at the time was Stanley Cowell, who
Oh my God, what a genius. I
wonderful guy.
adore Stanley Cowell. What a fantastic composer. I didn't know him very well, but he
Mhm.
was a hero of mine growing up. And
Mm.
in fact, I never went into a jazz career. I played a lot of jazz when I was young, but I have transcriptions of his that I play for my own pleasure. I love
Oh,
playing equipoise. Oh,
sure.
gorgeous. And um, I think it's called Abstractions. I can't remember. That very first solo album he did, Musa, Ancient
Mhm.
Streams. Oh my God, that is one of the best jazz solo albums ever, ever.
He was also an Art Tatum fanatic, as it seems like you are
Oh,
as well.
well, yeah, because I did one of the first books of Tatum transcriptions. And I think that's how Stanley knew me, because when that book came out, at the time, there were not too many books of this kind. And this was a project I took on just because I was young and stupid and I thought I could do it. And it was a challenge, but then I also did further Tatum transcriptions. And Stanley Cowell, indeed, I think he heard Art Tatum at his home. I think his father brought him over to the house. And so Stanley was really into that. I know that. Oh, lucky you.
Yeah, he was great. Um, and then, other thing I want to jump back to, I believe you used the term like musical ethics when you were talking about Dick Hyman and his influence
Yes,
on you, something
yes.
like that. Can you explain what that means? That sounds like such an intriguing concept, but what do you think of when you say something like that?
Well, when I talk about the ethical blueprint, what I'm talking about is how you show up as a musician, and what is your professional comportment. Um, how do you show up to performances? How well do you prepare? How do you act? How do you interact so that in a way that people will hire you again, or else to build trust and respect and build a reputation, you know.
Hmm.
And so it really just has to do with, all of the things that you need to know, to be a musician in a very intensely competitive field.
Hmm.
And and not just professional, but also how you take care of yourself, how you practice, how you developing work habits, which I really should be more consistent about them than I should, meaning, composing every day, whether I feel like it or not. I tend to work well when I have deadlines breathing down my neck
Sure.
because sometimes I will go for weeks without touching the piano and I don't miss it. But when I have concerts, of course, I get into panic practice mode and I carry a lot of guilt around about that. But this is what I'm talking about. It's like, brushing your teeth or going to the gym. It's just
Hmm.
developing these the things that you have to do and making them habits. So that's really what I mean by the ethical blueprint. And it really was Dick Hyman who established that for me. And it applied as much to my classical and contemporary music life as well as my broadcasting life or my writing reviews life, all the 9 lives that I have,
Hmm. Yeah. So thank you for sharing it with that. I could branch up on that as well, but
I'm
you know what
sure you can, all
I
musicians can.
I'd love to, because our audience, our core audience here is the piano technician, and I know you've probably got a ton of overlap with that. And you work with Clavier House, which, if people are unfamiliar with it, is just one of the most, um, you know, respectable, piano rebuilders and
Oh,
purveyors in New York
yes,
City, in the world,
absolutely.
probably. Can you
Absolutely.
speak a little bit about Clavier House, the people involved and how you got involved and how that led
Sure.
to your projects with them?
I'm very happy to talk about Clavier House. I've been involved with them and I've known Sujatri Reisinger, who was one of the two brothers who founded the business. His brother Gabor passed away many years ago. But I first got to know Sujatri mainly just from going into Clavier House and looking at all the beautiful instruments and getting to know the extraordinary craft work and polish and seriousness with which he approached rebuilding and restoration. And we did a project back in 2003 when the World Financial Center reopened after 9/11, where I was asked to participate in a concert involving 21 pianists, where they got 21 Fazioli grand pianos, and we performed two symphonies for 21 pianos composed by the late Daniele Lombardi. And so not only did I participate, but they also asked me to help recruit pianists for this event. And in addition, I also conducted and supervised rehearsals prior to the performance. And uh, and then I would often practice at Clavier House, or if I needed rehearsals with two pianos, they would always kindly let me there. And anyway, I had been in touch with them on and off for many years, and I had visited their new showroom. I think they moved to their current showroom on 11th Avenue in Midtown New York in 2018. And I had attended some events there. But in the meantime, after the pandemic, my friend Joseph Patridge, who was a recording engineer and
Hmm.
someone who was just a real central figure in the New York piano community, he, along with James Wu, built a video and audio studio at Clavier House because they had been doing some recordings, but they built something that was pretty much state of the art. And Joe started a weekly piano series at Clavier House where which took place Sunday evenings, and he would introduce the concerts, and then they would be live streamed, and he'd have interviews with the artists. And he was doing this on kind of an informal basis, although the concerts were advertised and done pretty consistently. Anyway, Joe passed away very suddenly last December, and they had a holiday concert planned. So I was asked if I would come down and host the concert. And then James Wu, who runs the space and who also has a company called Lumineer, which is the audio company that does recordings there. He and Sujatri asked if it would be possible to host the rest of the concerts because Joe had booked concerts through the spring,
Sure.
and so I said, well, let me do this for a few months and let's see how it works. And I think what you probably would need would be a new artistic director because Joe had invited a lot of people to play, or he was talking with artists
Hmm.
to book. So there was a big waiting list. So I became their acting artistic director, and I then started contacting these artists saying, well, now that Joe has passed away, I'm taking over for the time being. And if you're still interested in playing, we have these dates available and so on and so forth. And then during the spring, it was decided that the series would continue into this current season. So I was named the official artistic director. So there is still a lot of spillover from the Joe Patridge dynasty, so to speak.
Hmm.
But now that we had this, but then more and more artists started applying to play, and people who I personally knew. And then, but then I started drawing from my list of piano contacts, which has much, much more of an international reach
Hmm.
than Joe had, because Joe basically worked out of New York,
New
whereas,
York guy.
I'm traveling, quite a bit.
Hmm.
But uh, but what's wonderful is that the series gives opportunities for emerging pianists and also established pianists too to play on these absolutely wonderful world-class instruments in a very intimate setting, and which is why it's called salon concerts at Clavier House. And so every week there's a concert. It's Sunday at 2 o'clock. In fact, this weekend is special because tonight at 7 and tomorrow at 7, we're having a special Italian pianist festival, which has been going on in New York, also at Barge Music, where pianists from the Rovigo Conservatory in Italy are performing Italian piano music. And the two concerts that are on our series each concert features two composers who are also pianists. And it's really quite exciting. And I've heard a lot of this music. And this is something that you won't find anywhere else.
Yeah. What a wonderful opportunity. It's great that you were able
Yeah.
to
And it isn't
pick up
just
the reins there.
classical. Like, for instance, in January, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of Keith Jarrett's Cone concert, where I have
Hmm.
six pianists who are improvisers, but not necessarily all jazz pianists, who are taking a section of the transcription and they're going to do their own thing with it. So it's going
Wow.
to be reimagined. And then on December 8th, which happens to be my birthday, my dear friend Steve Ross, who is a wonderful cabaret pianist and singer, we're going to have an open house where we're inviting a lot of our friends and we're having impromptu jam sessions on two pianos where we pick names out of a hat, and whoever we pick out of a hat, they play together.
That's fun. I don't know if we can do this, but I notice your the light streaming in is kind of
Oh,
washing out
there's
your face a
nothing
little
I
bit.
can do. Hold
Oh,
on.
okay, that's fine.
Uh, I mean, I can't put the
You
shade
can't put
on
a
it.
shade over the window.
No,
No, that's fine.
no, it's not an option,
It's not an
unfortunately.
option. That's fine. You're
That's
turning
okay.
into you're
I'm
turning
turning
into an
into a
angel.
ghost.
Yeah, a ghost of some sort, which is also fine.
That's okay. Well, yeah, considering that I'm obsessed with dead pianists,
There you go.
it makes sense, right?
Appropriate. Yeah. Yeah, it's no problem. I just thought I'd try. I would love to hear a little bit of your music, get like sample it, so that people get a chance. I think we talked in advance about an album that features something called Loose Changes,
Uh-huh.
And can you just give us a little context, and maybe we'll play a little bit of a
Yeah.
couple of tracks
Yeah.
from that?
This was a work for two pianos that was commissioned by a duo called Quattro Mani, fabulous pianists. And this was back in 2005, they commissioned the piece, and they made an absolutely mind-blowing recording of it. In fact, they play it so well that I would not dare play the piece myself. And it's 10 very short pieces. And I think we're going to hear the second of these pieces, which is
Yes.
kind of a goofy little piece, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, here we go. Let me make sure we're at the front of
Okay.
it, and I'll hit go here. Loose changes, number 2. Wow. Was
God.
that like 15 or so? I was like, what's this? Is there a signature there? Is it changing? I was trying to
I
catch
think
it.
no, 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 no. I think it's mostly in four, I
It's
think, and
mostly
then
in
and then
4.
it
Okay.
goes into three,
Okay.
and then I can't remember what happens at the end. I mean, it you know, it's kind of like minimalism meets Schumann, and where they all kind of drunk the Kool-Aid or something. I don't know.
I love that.
I had oh, thank you. Yeah, I had a lot of fun writing that piece, but
I mean, yeah,
what performers
yeah, very, very solid execution on that. I
and
mean, and that one
how.
is let's see, that track's about a minute and a half. And I'll be honest, like when we play a track on here, usually I would say at about 30 seconds in, no matter what it is, it's kind of like, oh, all right, well, let's get back to the conversation. But I just had to kind of like, I kept getting connected with it, you know. So
Oh,
it
good.
really, yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
it's really, I mean, yeah, I found it really engaging. So great job with
Thank you.
that one,
Thank
as
you.
well as the
Thank you very
performers.
much. Yeah. Thank you.
Um, so tell us a little bit more about the scene there in New York in terms of like pianos themselves, right? Do you own a piano? I know it's New York.
I
Sometimes
own
it's hard to
two
have an
pianos.
acoustic.
I
Yeah,
have
tell
two
me.
pianos. I have a Yamaha Baby Grand, which is a
Hmm.
piano I've had since I was 15 years old. I also have a Steinway upright,
Mm.
and I have a Yamaha electronic keyboard, which actually a neighbor just gave to me. It's really quite wonderful. And I also have a Casio, which I had to move out and put in my storage unit, but I'll probably move that to my place in Italy, I guess. But
How's that Steinway upright? I know sometimes those can be, you know, have their issues, but is that one performing pretty well for you?
yeah, yeah, it's perfectly fine. I'm happy. I'm very happy to have two pianos in this
Yeah.
room, which is great for rehearsals or for sometimes when I have parties and there are more than one pianist, and you know, and they gravitate toward the pianos, and it's a lot of fun. I really love piano ensembles, and I love playing four hands with friends because there's no professional pressure attached to it. Although recently I've been playing a lot of symphonic repertoire in concert professionally, which means there is professional pressure with pianists here and in Europe, you know, going through a lot of the Mahler symphonies and some Shostakovich symphonies, things like that. Just
Mm.
been a great deal of fun.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some great parties over at your house. Man, some beautiful music. I'm sure it's taken place in that place.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so I also wanted to touch upon, like I said, you're doing something similar to what we're doing here, right? This is kind of like audio programming, right? And especially the radio show, and I'm just
Hmm.
want to hear a little bit more about you getting involved there and how you found that, and
Oh,
you know,
okay. Well, that was a really funny story. I have always wanted my own radio show ever since I was a little kid because when I was a toddler, I was obsessed with radio. All kinds of
mm,
radio, from
mm.
top 40 to freeform FM radio growing up to,
Freeform FM radio. Give us a pause there. What's
well,
freeform FM radio?
what I'm talking about is in the late 60s, you had stations that were becoming more album oriented rather than playing the top singles,
Mm,
where you'd have a station that would put on a 19-minute long track
mm.
where their DJ would go to the bathroom or smoke a joint or something. That, I mean, because you would, on your standard AM pop radio, you'd never hear the 19-minute version of Iron Butterflies and Agata Davida or Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. And there were certain college radio stations where they had a very free approach to this, but there were also stations where they had call in listeners. They had, where really it was just like an anything goes kind of thing.
Got
And
it.
I love that kind of radio, and I wish
Sure.
they had more of it now. But I also was listening to classical stations, and some of the more enlightened stations had very inspiring piano programs. And this was the kind of thing I always wanted to do all my life. And having been a guest on the radio so many times, in my adult so-called career, I always envied, I was happy to be a guest like I am here. I'm very happy to be with you, but I always want to be on the other end. So back in 2015, I bumped into an old acquaintance of mine, David Osenberg, who is the artistic director, the music director of WWFM, which is based in New Jersey, a wonderful classical station. And when he told me he was at the station, I was just very blatant. I said, I want my own show. And he said, well, come on down to the station and let's talk, because maybe you can be a guest on my show, because he has a show called Cadenza, a wonderful interview show. So I go down to the station, and I thought that we were just going to talk about me being a guest and just to see the station. But immediately they started asking me questions like, what kind of a show do you see yourself doing? I thought, huh? Me? Show? Why are you asking this question? Okay, well, I want to have a piano show every week where the content is different. Sometimes I'll play recordings, sometimes I may have a guest, or sometimes I'll just do a random playlist, or sometimes I'll compare 15 recordings of the same piece of piano music and get really geeky about it. And
Mm.
then they said, that sounds great. We'll give you a show. And why don't we, at the same time, we'll make you our artist in residence? That was all. That took like 10 minutes. And I thought, yikes, this just fell into my lap. So I was grateful to have a show where I could do whatever I wanted, but I do use my freedom very responsibly, because I have to bring everything in 58 minutes and 30 seconds.
Mhm.
So I had to work very carefully with timings, and I scripted everything. And then I figured out that I could record everything from home, because you see the microphone I have here, this is what I use for my show, and I have a
Mhm.
USB mixer. So I record and edit everything here, then I just send it to the radio station. And it's the show will be going into its 10th year in
Amazing.
March 2025. And then I also started a podcast recently, as if I needed to do yet another project. And it's called The Piano Maven, your friendly guide to piano recordings. And it's a show where I just do very brief discussions about piano recordings. I don't play samples because for a podcast, you have to get the rights and deal with all that. But I do provide links to where you can stream or listen or download or purchase recordings. And that's starting to get a little following. And I've been very happy about that. And so the podcast is on twice a week, and I record the episodes way in advance. And that's generated a lot of feedback in a very short time.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, podcasting is great because you can get
Oh, I love
started.
podcasts.
Yeah.
I mean, I was obsessed with the Gilbert Gottfried's amazing colossal was Gilbert Gottfried's amazing colossal podcast when it was on.
Oh, I haven't checked that out. I haven't heard of
Oh
that.
my God. Well, he was interviewing all these, showbiz legends. It
Okay.
was just a wonderful,
I
wonderful
have a
show.
funny story about Gilbert Godfrey. It's a funny New York story. Okay.
So you're in the piano business. Now, did you sleep with that teacher like everybody else? No, I'm teasing.
So, okay, this is
I want you to tell me.
this is a kooky story. All right, so I had an apartment in Clinton Hill, Fort Greene area, Brooklyn,
Uh-huh.
and we're looking for a roommate. Probably put an ad on Craigslist or something. People are coming in, we're interviewing them and
Yeah.
whatever. And actually, this person, I won't say their name, but I will give them details about them. They're also they're involved in radio. Interesting. I'm just noticing this. So they were going to various apartments to interview to be a roommate, right? And
Yeah.
they walked in the door where they thought they were just gonna meet whoever lived there and find out if they're a good match, but
Right.
instead it's in the person's living room and they have a live audience and they've set it up like a talk show that they're recording,
Oh my
and
God.
the guy the guy who's doing, I think it was actually to look for a roommate, I'm not sure,
Hmm.
but the guy who's actually looking for a roommate, quote unquote, is at the desk and he has a sidekick and it's Gilbert Godfrey.
Oh my God. Gilbert had a sidekick?
No, so they treat it like a little talk show. You know
Oh,
how
I
like
see.
you would have like Ed McMahon as a sidekick
Right,
on
right, right.
Carson, right? And so they had gotten Gilbert Godfrey to be the
Amazing.
sidekick for the guy who was looking for a roommate, and they kind of
Amazing.
like they just surprised people, with this kind of talk show format. But then they actually interviewed them as the roommates, so they're asking them
That is so
questions
funny.
about everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me, do you make a good living? Can you give me some money?
Exactly. But anyways, yeah, Gilbert
That's so
Godfrey, what
funny.
a personality.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
How he ties in with the piano world remains to be seen.
Good stories though. Um, so
Absolutely.
we were introduced to you by Hannah Reimann as well,
Oh
who's
yes,
been a regular guest
yes.
here.
Oh,
Um,
indeed. Yeah.
yeah, and this has been a fun. We've been collaborating with her for a few years. It's been kind of fun. We've been able to introduce her to some people who've helped her cause. She's working with a fellow in Michigan who makes keyboards, right? And so
Yeah.
now they can collaborate in offering these more widely.
Oh,
Dean Ray.
it's amazing work that she does, and I
Mhm.
think Hannah's crusade, really, on behalf of the Stretto keyboard, has really been liberating for pianists all over the world. And I really hope that it will change things a lot. And I hope to see these keyboards being available in competitions because look at it, in professional sports, if you're allowed to use a tennis racket that suits your size or suits your hand, why can't you have a piano keyboard that can fit your hand? I mean, why does it all have to be uniform? I think that's the most ridiculous thing in the world. And I have to tell you that I have normal hands, but I played two concerts actually on Hana's fourth annual International Stretto Festival this past summer. One of them was a Thelonious Monk evening, but the other one I played a contemporary classical concert, which was a totally last minute thing. I played on 3 hours notice and I had about 40 minutes to get acquainted with this piano. But I love the smaller keyboard because even though I had to make little adjustments, I found that there were certain things like where with large chords where I would have to stretch or struggle just a little bit. I could play with no problem. It was like a walk in the park.
Mhm.
Now, I had to make certain other adjustments, but they were relatively easy to make. I guess it's like the difference between driving a larger or smaller car. But, once you make the adjustment, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah,
And I know so many pianists, especially women who have smaller hands, who have always been frustrated with that, certain repertoire they feel is out of reach. But with this keyboard, anything is possible. And I remember Hannah was telling me when she was talking to Alicia Della Rocha about this, and Alicia Della Rocha said, I've been waiting all my life for something like this. But, at the time, I think she had retired. So she's, passing the torch to the next generation. But I mean, I've never seen somebody so committed to a cause as Hannah, and being so generous in this cause and really opening up, this world to so many pianists. I think she's just a very important person in our piano community.
certainly some type of calling. Yeah, that's not a it's not an easy undertaking she's taken on, but there's no turning back, and she's kind of
No.
full force on it. So
Well, I suppose being in the piano community is a kind of a calling. I mean, what I do is a labor of love. I feel fortunate I can make a living from it, but then I think all the different things that I'm doing, whether I'm performing or writing music or teaching master classes, which is something kind of new, which I adore teaching
hmm,
master classes. I love working with young pianists and also judging competitions. I mean, this is something that um, I'm not going to say I would do it for nothing because I wouldn't, but it's basically I feel like I'm making a living at my hobbies.
hmm. Tell me about the master classes and what kind of things have you done so far? What kind of folks are participating? And yeah.
Oh, well, it depends. I've been to the Rovigo Conservatory in Italy and also the Durtal Music Festival in France, where I was last year. And I also was at the Chicago International Music Festival this last summer, where I was working with young pianists who would come in and play pieces for me, and I would make comments. I wouldn't give them so much technical advice, although sometimes if I would see that they're sitting awkwardly or there's something kind of stiff in their body language, I would kind of help them. But it was more of making diagnoses rather than trying to preach or impose a way of playing. It was like, what are you doing? What are you trying to do? And it's also like when I'm judging a competition, if I hear somebody playing, I'm not going to say, oh, I play the piece this way. I don't agree with it. So you're out of this round. I try to listen to see, okay, maybe their Bach playing is not convincing me. Let's look at some other repertoire. It's like a doctor saying, okay, this is not working for you, but here's something that you're doing that's very positive. So
Hmm.
I always think of this as being more of a diagnostician than a teacher and just making observations and listening and sometimes even just looking at a score and just having them look at the score and thinking about what is the audience hearing? Are you projecting sufficiently enough? Because a lot of times pianists, the one problem of the in the piano community is that we all tend to work in very isolated ways because we're holed up in our apartment or in a practice room, and it can sometimes cause you to lose perspective. Like sometimes you could be practicing a lot and you don't hear that your tempos are going all over the place or too fast, or that your dynamic range is limited, because if you're in a tiny room, if you play mezzo forte, it's going to sound forte, but then if you transport what you're playing into a big hall, it may not sound at all. So you have to think about these kinds of things. I remember there's a student I worked with in Chicago who played a very difficult Liszt piece for me, and this student had never played in a concert hall before. I think the student had only played in his living room and had only had lessons on Zoom.
Mm,
So what I did was I had him go out into the hall and listen, and I played. I said, "This is what you sound like. Can you hear this?" You see, you're so used to being at home, but this is like you've been riding a bicycle and now you're behind a Rolls Royce.
mm,
So
mhm,
these are very practical kinds of things, and which I think should be taught, because these are, I don't know, maybe they're not so much piano lessons, or they're lessons in life, or lessons in how to be in the piano life, I guess.
Yeah, well, it is a life, and I think that's something that we touch upon here um, often. Is we'll have different musicians and different people making their career. By the
Yeah.
way, I'm remembering right now on this topic
Yeah.
the guest for our master class this month is Robert Estrin. Are you familiar with Robert Estrin?
Oh, sure, because I get his emails all the time, and his father was one of the greatest American pianists ever, the late Morton Estrin, who I was so lucky to have heard in concert many times, and I wish his recordings would be available on CD. That they are not available is
Mm,
just a disgrace. I mean, he made wonderful Rachmaninoff and Scriabin recordings for Connoisseur Society. See, I'm a real recording geek. I'm
I
giving
guess
that
so, yeah.
away.
Yeah, so well, it's wonderful. But yes, Robert Estrin is a great example of how the world is evolving for musical people and musicians, right? Like you said, maybe when you were a youngster, you might do a gig at the Dime Bank or, whatever, some crazy things that nowadays would be like, what is that? But at the same time, these days, there's also things where you would go, what is that? Right? Because things change, right? And so a
Well,
career in
the
music,
whole online thing, I
yes,
think during the
exactly. Yeah.
pandemic, when people started giving concerts from their homes,
Hmm.
and this whole hybrid half concert, half recording situation evolved, because you'd have something that was a concert, but also you could have feedback
Hmm.
with people listening in. So it kind of we're taking 21st century technology and bringing it into the kind of 18th century, 19th century salon values.
Hmm.
But it begat this new kind of technology. It begat this new technology that was not quite live, not quite audio recording. And we're still trying to figure that out, still trying to figure out
Hmm.
how to pay for it,
Hmm.
improving the sound, and also different ways of marketing ourselves and getting our artistry out there. So we may not be playing piano in banks, but we're doing shows like this. This didn't exist when I was a kid. The home
you might
computers
have
didn't
a
exist.
you might have a podcast sponsored by a bank or something, right? I mean,
Well, I'm looking for sponsors for my podcast. I'm set up on Patreon, so I will take all contributions. Your contributions are welcome, you know.
yes. And let's branch off here. We're wrapping up soon, but Patreon brings
Yeah,
up a couple of things for me. It brings me back to
sure.
Robert Estrin, just for the fact that again, there's sort of all these new modes of building a career. And when you look at what Robert's done, he's a wonderful pianist.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you know the story, but he started out doing this living piano concept by taking himself around the country with a vehicle that actually contained multiple types of historical piano and keyboard instruments. And he
Oh,
would bring them around and he would do a show where he would dress up as Mozart and Beethoven and
yeah,
like
it's
teach
kind of like
people.
yeah, it's like the piano version of the Purim Spielers.
Yeah, yeah. And then, and that evolved into this very unique thing, but he's, made it a very successful living at it. He's selling pianos, he's teaching people about music and pianos and
Yeah,
but it's very
well,
unique.
there you
You
go.
couldn't say to a kid in school, what are you going to be when you grow up? And they say that, because it's just so unique.
Yeah, but it's a living, and it's unique, and it's wonderful, because you're basically, I always say to musicians, everywhere, that we are fundamentally in the service industry. We're serving the composer, we're serving the community. And what Robert Estrin is doing, he is serving music and he's serving the cause of the piano by doing this in such a creative way. But this is what piano duos were doing in the 1930s, taking pianos all over, doing community concerts. Even Eugene Isteman was carting his Steinway around on a truck and giving concerts in all these places. That's what Sviatoslav Richter was doing at the end of his career, like, schlepping his two Yamahas all over Europe and then, passing the hat. I mean, it's kind of cool, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, and I think more artists, right, meaning
Yeah.
musicians in this case,
Yeah.
need to realize that they can be an artist more than just, or creative, more than just with their musical expression, but how they design what the career they're going to have. I did
Well,
want to,
it's a
yeah.
life. I mean, it's not a career. It's a musical life. That's what you
Hmm.
have to think about. Yeah.
Are you familiar with the story of Patreon? I'd love to share that too. That's an actually interesting one, like how it got started.
That I don't know, but I'll
So
find out.
yeah, check this out. I just learned of it myself, and I was like, wow, this is actually amazing. So there was a guy who was making his own music, making nothing at it, and he loved to make videos for YouTube with the music. He'd create some masterpiece. He's more of like a rock and pop musician, but these would be
Right.
really elaborate things, really
Hmm.
elaborate videos and whatever. He'd post it on YouTube. He'd get like 1 million views, and he'd make like $5 in like somehow, in sort of monetization on
Yeah.
YouTube.
Yeah.
And he had this idea. He said, "Well, there's so many people that care about this and are interested in this. I've got this whole fan base, and I'm making $5." And he met with his college roommate, who was a programmer, and he said, "I've got this
Hmm.
idea." And so he started Patreon. And what's fascinating is that he continues to make music. He has the time to make music and be creative independently, as well as be the CEO of Patreon, which is now like, I feel like it's a multi-billion-dollar company at this point.
Wow.
That's a
Well, boy.
fascinating story of how, again, somebody found a very niche way of developing a, life or career.
Well,
Um,
that's what I've been struggling to do all my life. I wake up every morning, I feel like I have to reinvent myself. I mean, I'm, my late 60s. I wake up in the morning, I still feel like I'm 23 and I'm just starting making my way in the New York music life and trying to figure out what it's all about. And I don't know if I've done it or not, but it's an adventure. I guess it keeps me honest, right?
I mean, it sounds like I mean, I think the really wonderful thing about, from an outside perspective, about what you're doing is,
Yeah.
like you said, a lot of the stuff you're doing, you're getting paid to do stuff that you love, and interact with, people
Hmm.
and creative situations that bring you joy, and are things you'd probably be doing anyway. So that's really wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's what I think makes our piano community so interesting and so diverse. And what you've been doing is so important, and you've been really, feeding the community in such a wonderful way. And I really appreciate you having me on your show. It's really quite an honor to be with you, and I've enjoyed this. I know our time is wrapping up. My goodness,
Hmm.
it went so fast because I
Hmm.
tend to go off on topic and wander, and I, you know, the weave.
The weave. Like that. Yeah, that's
Oh
funny.
no,
Oh no,
perish
don't
the
say
thought.
that.
No, perish the thought.
No, but yeah, it's been really wonderful. So my company in New York is the Floating Piano Factory, and we do piano tunings. We also have an apprenticeship program where we teach people how to tune pianos and get
Oh,
them out there.
wonderful. Can you
Um,
tune a fish? No, I'm done.
Piano, you can tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but we put on our first concert event about a month ago, a month or two ago at this point, and it was
Where'd you
amazing.
do? Where?
We did it at a brewery in Brooklyn called Three's Brewery, and what
Oh,
we
cool.
did was we reached out to, just basically anyone and everyone that's either in our clientele list or, just in our community,
Hmm.
thousands of people. And
Yeah.
we said, hey, we got this kooky idea. Let's do this little concert thing, and we'll have a
Yeah.
show where we feature musicians. We had about 12 different musical acts, musicians, groups, things
Oh,
like that. And
invite me next time. It
I
sounds
would
like
love
great
to.
fun.
I would
Yeah.
love to. And we we had each person just play for a little bit, 5,
Yeah.
10, 15 minutes or whatever.
Great.
And
Yeah.
the amount of talent that was there, and also not only the talented people that were performers, but the level of engagement of that audience of just loving to hear all these different things. We had a Juilliard masters, two master students at Juilliard,
Mm-hmm.
just one example, two master students at Juilliard who are from Israel. One is Palestinian, the other's Jewish,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
they played four-hand piano together, and it was just
Oh,
like, oh my gosh,
you see,
yeah,
just I wish the whole world could work that way.
I know, right?
Get Russian, Ukrainian pianists to play duets, get
Indeed,
Democrats and Republicans to play duets.
indeed, indeed. Um,
Well, I mean, you think about like Harry Truman, what a great president, he was a pianist and that's how he bonded with a lot of people, you know.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I'll do our official outro momentarily, but where would you like to send people to learn more, to follow along? You said you have a Patreon and
Well,
podcast,
I
YouTube. Just
also have a website which is Jed Distler, Jeddistl. I have to learn how to spell my name. JEDDISTLER.com.
okay.
That's my website. And you can also check out my radio show Between the Keys on WWFM.org and my podcast, The Piano Maven with Jed Distler. You can find that wherever you can find podcasts. It's all over the place. And also visit clavierhouse.com. That's KLAVIERHAUS.com and look for the salon concerts at Clavier House and come on Sunday afternoons. Come and say hi.
Wonderful. Now I have to just, this seems interesting just because I saw it on your website. Now they go, meditate with the masters. What is this?
Oh my goodness. This was a CD I did years ago. And it's basically I take classical music's greatest hits and I turn them into new age piano solos.
Okay.
Although there's a little more substance to them than probably meets the eye. At first I kind of had the idea of just doing this kind of as a joke, but where I would play Beethoven's Ode to Joy in the style of George Winston. But then
Okay.
as I got more and more involved with the
Okay.
material, I started really working very meticulously on these arrangements.
Nice.
And I think that they really hold up very well, and you can find it, you can download it or stream it. And I'm, I stand by it. It's not typical of what I do. But the disc that you really should look for is Fearless Monk, which are my reimaginings of Thelonious Monk songs. And you can find
Oh,
that on Bandcamp.
okay.
Actually, just do Jed Distler Fearless Monk on Bandcamp. It's not on Spotify, unfortunately, but you can find it on Bandcamp. And I'm very, very, very proud of that disc.
Wonderful. Lots of great stuff. Opening up some new doors, both into your own
Cans
music
of
and
Worms.
yeah, and the music of others, which we appreciate you
Yeah.
highlighting and sharing with folks. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I'll
Well, thank you
outro us
for
here.
great. And thank you so much. And thank all of you out there for listening and joining in. And I hope to see you when you're in New York next time.
Absolutely. We'll definitely get together.
All
All right,
right.
folks, we have reached
Take
the
care.
end of another musical journey at Piano Tech Radio Hour. Thanks to Jed for joining us today. We're brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, cutting edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. If you joined us today by signing us up for the individual session, make your life more convenient. Subscribe to PTRH, $16 a month. Get the recording of today's session and remember area automatic registration for each week's new session, bit.ly/join PTRH. Don't forget that masterclass coming out with Robert Estrin that we mentioned a couple times, and the podcast, the audio only at pianotechradio.com, the blog on Substack, and find us on socials, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. We'd love to see you there. Okay, Jed, we'll let you go.